Hello everyone, welcome to episode 19 of Berry Fun Adventures. I am Tanya and I am the dyer behind Berry Fun Yarns. And I'm coming to you today. I am back in Minnesota, southeast Minnesota, at Firefly Berries, which is the farm that my family and I run, and we specialize in strawberries, grapes, and naturally dyed yarn. So I'm back. Those of you who have been following me for a little bit, you know that we were on vacation in Hawaii for a little while, but we have returned. We are back now 2 weeks today, so I finally adjusted to the time change and the weather. Funnily enough, when we first came back, I was really hot all the time, which was strange because I'm normally cold, and so it was funny. My husband they were kind of joking, "Oh, you brought the heat back, you got enough sun when you were in Hawaii," which would have been a really great thing, except then we realized that my mother-in-law, who was staying here taking care of the kids while we were gone, had actually just turned the heat up and left it at a higher temperature than we were used to, hence the reason I felt hot. So anyway, not so much anymore, but the temperatures, I'm looking out the window right now and it is a beautiful sunny winter day. It's not very warm, I guess it's in the teens probably, but at least it is sunny and it's headed upwards and not downwards as far as temperature concerns. So, but I am completely happy today. I am wearing all kinds of woolly things. Let me tell you what I'm wearing to start with. This is my finished object from the last episode I showed you. It is my Advent cowl, the pattern Advent Wallop Cowl by Leineke Bozeman, I think is the name. And this is the one that I made out of all of my Berry Fun yarns, little mini skeins from the holiday 2021 holiday countdown kit. So that's what that is. And then the other sweater I'm wearing, not in a very great spot to show you, but it is my Puntilla sweater, and it is by Joji Locatelli. And it has this really pretty lace on the edges. Let me show you. So you knit the sweater and then you do this little lace. You kind of pick up stitches and you do the lace, and then it just sort of sticks out the end of your sweater. And that is on the sleeves and also on the bottom. I'll link my project page below and you can see that closer. But I loved that pattern. It was great. I actually added, the pattern calls for just fingering weight, and you can probably tell as you look at it, especially when I hold it close. I held mohair double for the main part of the sweater just because I wanted it to be a little bit warmer. And it's perfect. It adds the warmth but not the weight of this, a heavier yarn. So I do love that. So let me put this back on. So since I've been home, I have been knitting quite a bit. I was looking to record earlier this week and was thinking, boy, I didn't really knit very much. But I have actually. In fact, just this week I have finished 2 projects, so let me show those to you. The first one is actually a project that I cast on since I came to you last, and I completed. So the day before we were to leave Hawaii, I decided I hadn't cast on any new socks, and I wanted to have some sort of Hawaii socks, so to say. When I was in Hawaii, I couldn't find any local yarn stores. There was a lot of fabric stores, but no yarn stores. So I kind of wanted to start a pattern or a project that were kind of my vacation socks for the memory's sake. So I cast on and completed my heel toe do-si-do socks. So they're very vibrant, you can see. I will kind of show you the close up. This is the yarn, the main body is self-striping from Show Me Yarn. I will link the project page. I can't remember the name of it. Bell Star maybe? But it's a beautiful rainbow. And then I just used black Cascade Heritage for my heels. It's such a pretty yarn that I didn't want to use. I wanted to use as much of the striping as possible, but I do like to have a contrasting cuff. So the pattern I used, let me take this off and see if we can see it better. It's hard to see when it's on the front of the sock. It is the heel toe do-si-do pattern by Kay of Crazy Sock Lady Designs. And it is a paid for pattern, but it's super fun. It's just this little chevron-y thing. It took me a little bit to get it so that it was, rememberable. I guess it didn't click with me at first, but her pattern also, I think the way she tells you, it's as if you're doing magic loops, so you'd have 2 needles, and I am a double point needle sock knitter, so I have 4 needles. So it just took me a little bit to kind of divide the repeat in half to figure it out. But once I got it, it was so easy and fun, and I loved doing it. So I'm definitely going to be making more of this pattern again. I was going to tell you something else. Oh, the pattern comes in 3 sizes. I think it's like 56 stitches, 64 or 72. And if you've watched my previous episode, you will remember that I kind of discovered with my Dreaming of Paris socks that I completed while I was away that 64 stitches is a little too much for me, and that I do better with the 60 stitches. So I wasn't quite feeling confident to cast on the 64 stitch size. So I measured my foot circumference, and it matched that of the small size, and my gauge matched her gauge. So I went with the size 56 stitches for me. And I have to say, when I first put it on, it felt a little tight, but after I blocked it and the yarn relaxed a little bit, it definitely feels like my size. So I'm definitely a 56 to 64 stitch size socks. I think that's the tricky bit when you're doing socks sometimes is it's sort of like when I was younger and I went to get jeans from a nicer jeans store rather than just going to Kohl's or Target. I remember them saying that they should be tight when you first put them on, because then they stretch and they are comfortable, right? You want a little bit of negative ease, otherwise they're really baggy. And that is so true with socks. You don't want them to be too baggy or they slip down and they are not comfortable. So anyway, long story short, I did 56 stitches on a size 0 DPNs, and I finished those this week and I love them. I'm going to put them in my sock basket and they'll be all ready for me to wear. So that is pair 3. My goal this year is to make at least 12 pairs of socks, and this is my 3rd pair that I've made in 2022. It is my 2nd full pair. One of the pairs I did take over as a whip from 2021. So if you're being technical, maybe that doesn't count, but I just want to I have so much beautiful sock yarn. I want to get it off my shelf and on my feet, or knit up for other people who would love to have socks. So, heel toe do-si-do socks. The other finished project that I did, let me put these sock blocks down, is my muscle burra hat. Now this I just finished last night or yesterday morning. Truth be told, it has not been a very long finish. I kind of pushed through at the end. I was previewing, those of you who maybe have followed for a while know that I homeschool my children, so I was previewing some videos when I came back for history and geography for them to watch, and while I was doing that, this was the perfect knit. So this is knit in Lavender Loon Candy Cane Forest, which was a colorway she had a couple Christmases ago. And the muscle burra hat, if you remember, by Ysolda Teague, is the one where you have a pinhole cast on, you increase to your stitch number count based on the gauge that you're getting. She has a chart in the pattern. And then you knit so far, and then you do the decreases. Well, if you remember, I had cast on the adult medium. And when I was in Hawaii, I realized it was way too big, that it wasn't going to be the right size for my head. So I decreased, I ripped back, and I went back to the adult small size. Well, as I was knitting, I realized though that I think even though the circumference was better at the adult small, I wanted the length of the adult medium. So what I did is I followed the length in the pattern for the adult medium, and I knit to the length that she said, and it turned out perfect. I'm going to put it on. I look kind of silly, but I think it fits perfect. I have a little bit of a slouch. I didn't really want to turn it over. I liked the look of it, just kind of how it is, but it's so warm and cozy. I actually wore it to bed for a little while last night, just till I warmed up, till the sheets got warm, and then I took it off. But it is perfect for around the house or outside, and I think I'm going to wear it a ton. So I see more of these in my future. Now I will say, this is my third one that I have knit, and every time that I have knit it, I get about halfway and I'm like, oh, this is so boring, and I don't want to knit it because it's just stockinette. But the fit of it and the versatility of the pattern, how you can knit at so many different gauges, and just how much I love the finished product, I will make more of these, and I think this is a great pattern for a gift knit too. So if you know somebody who could really just use a nice fitting hat, I think it's very forgiving. Plus, I think I made the adult small, but the stockinette I think is kind of forgiving, especially if they're not going to fold up the edge of it. I think it will be, sizing isn't quite as big of a deal. But I love that one. That's my second finished object. And then let's see. So I'm going to tell you about some whips. I have 4 whips plus something I'm mending right now that isn't so good. I have some future plans I want to tell you about. And then I have some in the dyepots and a series that I'm reading. So let's get moving with the whips. So where to start? How about we start with where did I put them? The jelly roll socks. Okay, so last time I came to you, I had finished knitting an entire jelly roll sock. And I was in Hawaii, and I believe I told you. So Jelly Rolls is a pattern by Mara Catherine Briner. It's a free pattern on Ravelry. And it has these cute rolls at the top. It is a shorty sock. There is a heel flap and gusset heel, and you can make it 2 color. There are directions, but I did it just 1 color. And then there's this slip stitch section in the middle of the foot. Now, when I came home, I knew that, so I didn't have extra needles. Like I said before, I knit my sock size 0 DPNs. I had not taken along my 1s or anything larger, so I didn't have a chance to do that. Now the slip stitch, you see, goes all the way around. I went up a needle size. I ripped back. I had finished the whole foot. I ripped back to where the colorwork section started, and I used size 1 needle, which I thought should be, a whole needle size. It should be fine, right? Well, I still think it's a little snug, and it definitely looks better, and I did try it on, and it feels better. However, I don't feel comfortable. Sorry, I got mohair in my nose. I don't feel comfortable giving them as a gift, as they are right now, only because everybody has different sensitivities when it comes to their feet, and for some people this would be really uncomfortable, and I'm not sure. I was going to give them to my mom, but I'm not sure if it will bother her or not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish these for myself. You may guess when I told you before that 56 stitches was fine for me. I have pretty narrow feet. I have very long, size 11, narrow feet. So I think this will be fine on my foot, especially after I wash it and the yarn kind of relaxes. But I don't know that I would make this pattern again, and if I did, I think I would almost go up 2 needle sizes for the slip stitch just because of how I knit. It just was a lot tighter gauge than my than my stockinette stitch. So all that to say, I ripped back and I reknit this section, and I'm doing pretty good actually. I did this all pretty much last night in one night, so that's not too bad. Oh, and the sock yarn is Berry Fun Yarns. Not sure if these colors will be back in the store or not, but this is Mom's Flowers chocolate strawberry milkshake, I believe, and then I'm not sure what the third one is, but there's 3 different colors. Yeah, so those are the Jelly Roll socks. I was almost going to say Rose City Rollers, but that's a different pattern by Mara Catherine Briner. Okay, moving on to my second whip. This is my husband's sweater, which I cast on while we were away. And last time I came to you, I think I was maybe not quite. I wasn't to the, I left a little marker. I haven't done a ton on this one. I was here. You can see where the little flower stitch marker was. So I've done about, 2 inches. But what I have done since I've come to you last is I have separated for the sleeves. So I cast on back step. This is the So Basic pattern by Maxim Sear, and I cast on the extra large size for my husband, and I'm knitting it in Berry Fun Yarns Sport, Berry Tough Sport, and this is the Under the Sea colorway, which is sort of a green and blue variegated color. So in the pattern, the sleeves have this beautiful ribbing, and it's a raglan shaping. There are some short rows, so I think it actually goes this way. There's some short rows to make the back a little higher, but it's going along pretty well. I kind of had to fudge it a little bit. You know, the increases don't look as nice as I'd like, but that is because I realized after I was knitting for a while that my gauge wasn't quite right. The pattern is for a fingering weight yarn, and I'm using sport weight. I'm realizing though that when I swatch, or when I started, for some reason I was way tighter on my swatch than I was on my gauge, and it wasn't that long ago. So I'm not sure if I was just really relaxed when I was on vacation or what the deal was, but so what I ended up doing is I'm making the small size now as far as numbers, but I am going to get the same measurements as if it was an extra large. So I did a little math basically, and what I had to do was I got to a point, you can kind of see it here, where I stopped the increases on one side, and I still had to increase a little bit on the sleeve side. And then I also, once I didn't finish my increases right before I separated, I had to knit a little bit farther. Because when you're knitting a sweater pattern, this is a note for maybe those of you who don't knit a lot of sweaters. If you do alter the sizing, so I altered the stitch count numbers basically, and that affected my depth or my row gauge basically. So I wasn't knitting as many rows, so the depth of my husband's sweater from like the top of his shoulder to his armpit was, if I would have stopped where it told me to stop in the small pattern when I got to the stitches, it would have been way too tight in the armpit, and nobody likes a tight armpit sweater. So basically what I did is I measured the depth of his shoulder to his armpit in one of his favorite sweaters, and then I also had him try it on. So there was a point where I thought I was good, and I had him try it on, and it couldn't, I'd cast on the extra stitches under the arm. I'd put the sleeve stitches on hold, cast on the extra stitches, and had him put his arm through it to see where that would leave it under his armpit, and it would have been too tight, even with the stretching after you block it. So I knit about 2 more inches then before before I separated. So yeah, so here I am. So I haven't done a ton of work on this recently because I have been working on the socks so much and the hat that I wanted to finish. But I'm sure I will pick this up again, and hopefully it'll be done not too long from now. I'm not sure. I'd love it if it could be done by the end of March. It is in sport weight, and I'm knitting it on a size, let's see, I think it's a 3. So it's a size 2, even smaller. So I am knitting it on kind of a small needle. With it being on that smaller size needle, it certainly is not knitting itself, but it's a simple, now I just have to go round and around, and then I'll go back and pick up the sleeves and finish those. So yeah, so that's going great. So Basic Sweater by Maxim Sear. That's just in my own little project bag I made for myself. And then what else? I did knit for a very, very small amount when I came home, not too much, on my Leia sweater, which is by Isabel Kramer. And this is a short, I think I'm going to do short sleeve. I would love it if it would be a long sleeve or maybe even 3/4 length, but it's going to depend on how much yarn I have left. I'm trying really hard to use up my stash as much as possible and not purchase extra. So this is where I am. And I guess I've knit maybe an inch or two. You can see where my little stitch marker, that was where I left off last time. But it's coming along. It has this beautiful lace at the top, and then just kind of knit down. And I am using, again, the same as I'm using in my husband's. This is Very Fun Yarns, Very Tough Sport, and this is in the Dusty Rose colorway. And I did have some Fabu Fibers, I can't remember the name exactly, but it's on my project page. That was sort of a contrasting, and I thought it would be sort of fun just to do a little blip of a color on the neckline, and I'll probably do it on the sleeves and on my waistband, just to kind of give it a little pop of color. So that is the Leia sweater. And then I have one more actual whip, if you want to call it that. Get down here at the bottom of my pile. And this is my big, huge magic cake ball that's blowing out because it was yellow. But I did, I don't know, we call it cast on, hook on. I started my granny stripe blanket while I was gone for when I came back on the airplane. And I kind of laugh at it when I came home because I wanted it to be bigger. I made a previous one and it was 300. This is a free pattern on Ravelry. It's by Lucy at Attic 24. And I think that I cast on 300 or 300. I think you're supposed to do like a multiple of 3 plus 2. And I think I did like 302 last time. And I thought, oh, well, I'll just make it like 360 some. That's not too much bigger. It turns out it's like almost king size when I get to it. But here it is. This is going to be a little more pastel in color, a little more lighter colors. So it's going to blow out a lot. But it is really, doesn't look like much right now except a big snake. It's very long right now. You can see the colors there a little bit better. But I did rip it out once, and I thought about ripping it out a second time. Note to anyone who has not made this pattern but may make it in the future, make your chain, so this is a crochet pattern in case you didn't realize that, make the chain that you use at the beginning really loose. Maybe even go up a hook size when you cast it on, because I found that mine's kind of tight. It's not really giving very much, and I didn't like that. So I did go back once and I ripped back and I tried to do it looser, but I didn't go all the way back to my chain. Excuse me, I only went back to the first row. So I probably should have gone all the way back to my chain. But it is a huge blanket. It's going to definitely be big enough to go over the top of our queen size bed. And I am planning on doing some sort of edging around it, whether it is a I-cord or some other crochet edging. So I guess I'm not too worried about it. I laid it out on my bed to look at it, and It did sort of pucker a little bit. If you look at it close, you can kind of see what I mean. This part is way more give than the part up here. So, but it wasn't enough that I was like, okay, I want to redo that all, because that's, you know, that's a lot of crocheting if you look at it. So the hook I'm using is a size C clover. You can see these are my favorite crochet hooks with the little rubber ergonomic handle. Yeah, and that's going great. I like doing that. I've been trying to do more Scrappy Sunday. If those of you who follow the Crazy Sock Lady know that she loves to do Scrappy Sunday. That's kind of her thing. So I've been trying to work on it a little bit more on the Sundays that we've been home, just because I really enjoy doing it, but I can't do crochet a super long time because it doesn't feel as comfortable to me on my wrists. You know, after a while I get a little wrist fatigue. So that is that. And then the other project that I'm working on, it's not really a new project. I don't think I'd really call it a whip. It's more of a mending project. And that is this. This is my Malin sweater. Let me show you the pattern. I love the pattern. This is a pullover by, I believe it's Isabel Kramer too. And it was my first pullover I knit myself back in April of 2016. I looked it up last night, and I wear this sweater all the time. It is knit out of Cascade 220 Superwash, so it's a merino, and I do wash it in the washing machine and the dryer, only because I find that it springs back better when it goes into the dryer. Otherwise it gets really loose and saggy. I may switch that a little bit because I do think that has made the sweater wear a little faster. But in the past, you remember me telling you that my elbows had worn out. So I made a little patch and I did both of my elbows. So this is the one side and this is the other side. And I have also my cuffs. I've replaced one. But my cuffs have really long, the pattern calls for long cuffs, and then sun is going in and out, so it's making it kind of dark. Sorry about that. But the cuffs are quite long, so you fold them down, and I find that right where I fold them, so say I'm folding the cuff like this little edge here, the yarn wore out there twice. I have replaced the cuffs on these twice. Now I don't have any more superwash gray in my stash. I had some non-superwash, but I didn't really want to mix it just in case I want to throw it in the dryer. And I didn't want to have to buy a whole nother. I'm sure I could get Cascade 220 in gray. It's I'm sure that it would be pretty close to the same. But I wanted to use what I had in my stash. So I decided I was going to use this color. This is Truffle Shuffle by Lavender Loon. It's actually in a fingering weight. And I held it double because this is a light worsted. And I made the cuff. So I have one done so far. So if you look at my sweater now, let's see if I can hold it up. So it will have the little patches, and then it will have the matching brown cuff. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. However, this I think will wear better because it is a high twist sock yarn, and I'm holding it double. And to be completely honest, this sweater has now become I have two of them. This one and my Manzanilla. They both have kind of become my work sweaters, my around the house sweaters. I use them when I go outside to prune grapes or to do field work when it's colder out in the spring and fall. So I'm not too stressed about it not looking exactly right, but I love the sweater. It's so cozy. It is a great fit. Has a beautiful little lace panel on the front. Yeah, so I'm on, I guess I didn't show you. I've just ripped out the second sleeve and I'm just starting the Purl 2 Knit 2 ribbing around. So that I'm sure I'll finish yet today, and then I can wear that when I have to go out and prune grapes, which is coming up soon. Let's see, what else do I have for you? I I was going to share some future plans, but I did not take out my yarn to show you. So I'm gonna wait. Maybe by next time I'll actually have it cast on. So we'll hold off with that. But I did want to show you some things I have been doing in the dye pots. So I dye yarn naturally with plants that we actually grow here on the farm for the most part. A lot of natural dyers will purchase their dye stuff for the most part and get in, marigold leaves or whatever. They'll get it already in powder form. I don't do that for the most part. There are a few things that I do get in, but for the most part I grow probably 80 to 90% of what I use myself. So the tricky bit with natural dyeing then is that if you're doing that, I have a limited number of colors. So unlike an acid dyer, I can't order a new color from a different company that would be a shade different, that would, when mixed with other things, will give me a different color. I have the same plants that I grow, so like marigolds or onion skins or rhubarb or bark of trees or things like that. So in the beginning, I'm going to be celebrating 5 years of dyeing yarn naturally for Berry Fun Yarns this March, the end of March. And in the beginning, I used the colors straight. Like I would do over dyeing, where I maybe would dye it in yellow and then I would dip it in another color like orange or blue or, different plants. But I've never really just experimented with the colors, mixing them beforehand. So when I came back, here I've got a couple things to show you. I decided I was going to do a little experiment to see if there was a large difference between whether or not I over dye it, so dipping it in one first to dye it that color and then dyeing it in another, or if I could just mix the two colors together. Like if I wanted it to be the same color, I would, in my brain, I'd say, well, I'd take equal parts of marigold and equal parts chlorophyll and I'd mix them together. Chlorophyll is one of the dyes that I do purchase, and it comes in powder form, and it is from buckwheat and alfalfa and other greens like that, so it's sort of a greenish color. So I needed to clean out my dye refrigerator a little bit to make room for some other things, so I pulled out my marigold and I pulled out some chlorophyll, and I was experimenting. Now these two skeins, I don't know if you're able to see the difference here. Let me see if I can get them. If you look closely, the one on the bottom is slightly more yellow and slightly darker. I may try to take a photo of these and then insert it here so you can see it better with a little bit better lighting. But it is just ever so different. This one's more green, this one's more yellow. The more yellow one, I did the marigold first and then I dipped it in the chlorophyll, and the greener one I mixed the dyes together and then I put them on at the same time. Now I haven't done a lot of acid dyeing at all, really, so I'm not sure if this holds true in the acid dyeing world as well. But for me, as a natural dyer, I do know that certain dyes adhere and into the yarn much more quickly than other dyes. For instance, yellow onion skins, you put them in the water and almost instantly it's like the yarn sucks up the color. Other ones, like lilacs, when I use lilacs, that one I have to leave overnight in the pot to get the full color. So what I think is happening here is that the marigold was absorbed into the yarn faster than the chlorophyll. So it's really fun and interesting to me as a natural dyer to know these little tweaks, because then if I want just a slightly different shade, I can get it from either mixing the colors together or over dyeing it. That little difference makes a tad of a different shade. So I'm hoping this will help me. I would love to develop more tonals that I have in my line more regularly. So maybe like a bunch of pinks that you could use as a fade or a gradient set of sorts, that sort of thing. So that's sort of where I am right now. I'm kind of in the experimenting phase in the pots because I just want to see what colors I can create with the dyes that I have that I haven't tried before. Because before I was staying, pretty true to form and just using them singly or over dyeing them. So this is also another one of those that I got that you can see it's much lighter. The bottom one is and the top one. That one I think was not a mixture one. That was more of a quantity one that I was just playing with the different dye amounts. But then this little experiment I did was probably the most fun. So yeah, you can see the subtle difference. This is my Yak Silk DK base, which is a luscious base of, I think it's 60% merino, 20% yak, 20% silk. It has a beautiful drape, and the combinations I was working on. So these two, you can tell this one has slightly more of a green hue, and this one has it's more of a gray. This one, of course, is the yellow gold. So this one I did solely as chlorophyll. Now the base for the Yak Silk is a light gray base, so the dyes do take slightly differently. But this one was just the green. And no matter how much green I would put in, like if I wanted to make it darker, it wouldn't get any darker. This was as much as it was going to absorb, as this gray-green color. So if I wanted to get a darker green, I'm going to have to dye it first in the yellow, which I do, and then dip it in indigo to get the green. Blue plus yellow equals green, right? The simple color theory. But this is also a really beautiful greeny gray color as well. And then this one, I believe I added just a little bit of logwood to it. Logwood is a bark that comes from a tree that grows in Central and South America. And I get the bark, I purchase the bark, it comes to me as looks sort of like what you'd put on your plants if you were buying, it's not compost, what is what I'm thinking of, mulch. If you were to buy mulch, that's what it looks like. And I boil it and simmer it, and then the color comes off of it. Now I do it, it's kind of an expensive thing to purchase, so I simmer it several times. The first time I simmer logwood, I get a deep, dark, rich purple color. And then every time as I simmer it, it gets to be a little more on the gray side and a little less on the purple side. So I took some of the later simmered logwood and I added it to the green. And I got this kind of beautiful, it's not showing up very olivey, but it definitely has a green tone to it, even though it is more gray. So I do love this one as well. And I will probably do both of these again. But these are two new ones that I was trying out on the Yak base. And this, of course, is the favorite, I don't remember what I used to call it. I kind of think it's going to be called the Golden Snitch from now on. But this is onion skins on on Yak Silk. So I was working on a custom order for someone who requested it last fall. When I over dye this in indigo, it gives me a rich green that I call Minnesota Northwoods, and that was what she was wanting. So I'm just preparing some of these for when I'm ready to do indigo again. But it was sort of amazing to me when I realized that I make a batch of, we grow our own onions. We grow lots of onions, hundreds and hundreds of onions, which we do eat, but I save the skins. And to make 3 skeins of this yellow color, it takes 50 grams of yellow onion skins, at least in my recipe. So I don't know if you've ever weighed your onion skins, but that is a lot of onions for 3 skeins. So maybe that will help you understand if you're ever looking for colors or things in a particular shade, and I don't have a ton of it, it is simply because some of the colors do take a lot of dye stuff for me to get the rich, vibrant color that I'm getting, and I just don't have the quantity of dye stuff to make that many. Of course, I'm always trying to grow more, but there's only so many hours in the day, right? So anyway, that's the new DK Yak Silk, and I'm hoping to have an update on my online store for the end of March when I celebrate my 5-year birthday. But right now I don't have anything new on there at the moment. These things I've not labeled or gotten ready to go online. Then there's just one last thing I want to show you that will be coming to the Berry Fun line of products here in the spring, and that are these, that is these beautiful new little tiny, I wanted to run away, little tiny mini skeins. Oh, there we go, that's a good color. So these are like super duper tiny little skeins. These are not regular like fingering weight mini skeins. These are embroidery weight thread basically, and it is, my yellow one's gonna pop out really. It is a combination of BFL and silk, so it's a very strong, sturdy thread, and it is 3 grams. Each one will be 3 grams in size, and I just plan to dye them in lots of different solids, and I'm not sure yet if I will be selling them singly or in sets or a combination, but the intent for them is for people who like to do stitching, embroidery, or visible mending, that it will give them something a little different, a little more fun, natural dyed to use in their projects. So if you have any suggestions or thoughts about that because you are a stitcher, then for sure leave notes down below for me. I'd love to hear what you have to say. So that's it for the dye pots. There's just one last thing I want to share with you before I say goodbye, and that is a book series that I love, that I am currently rereading, and it is about knitting. It is called the Beach Street Knitting Society and Yarn Club, and it is by Jill McNeil. And it is a 3-book series about a lady in her mid-30s who lives in London, whose husband, I'm not giving away any of the secret sauce because this happens all in the first couple pages. Her husband, she used to be a TV producer until she had children, and then she stayed at home. Her husband is also, he's like a news reporter that travels around the world doing reports, but he's gone a lot, he travels a lot. And he comes back, and she, from one of his trips, she thinks he's going to tell her that he got a permanent correspondent job somewhere and they're going to move, when in fact he tells her he's been having an affair. They get in an argument, he leaves the house, and he gets into a car accident and dies. And that's how the story starts. She's left with these 2 young boys and finds out later that he's taken out a second mortgage on the house. And so her grandma, who she calls Gran, owns a wool shop at a town, a smaller town along the shores in the UK, in Britain, and her grandma is ready to retire, so she wills the store, or gives the store to Joe, that's the main character's name, to take over and start a new life with her children there. And so it is a story of how she begins her new life. And what I love about it so much is that it's not a super cheesy romance. It's not a murder mystery kind of thing. And it's not, I guess if you were to label it as a genre, if it was a movie, I'd say it would be like a romantic comedy, because there is a little bit of romance in it, but it's probably more like a comedy. It's hilarious between the antics of the little boys and the friend who is always using very fun and colorful British slang, or just the way that the wording is, the characters, the way it's written, and the fact that it is about knitting, like really about knitting. Knitting is the main part of the storyline. It's not like it's sort of a sideline, oh, she knits on the side. No, they talk about like patterns and yarn companies that I'm familiar with. They talk about things going on in the store and making samples, and it's really, really fun if you are a knitter. So this is the first one, the Beach Street Knitting Society. I just finished this one yesterday. And the second one is called Needles and Pearls. And then the third one is called Knit One, Purl One. So anyway, that is a great little series. I know people would probably say it's a great beach read, but I tend to read more in the winter because I'm inside more. But yeah, so if you're looking for something light and fun to read that is sort of about knitting and that you like, about your craft, that's a great option. So I think that's it for the day. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I was going to share with you guys. I don't think so. I hope to be back again in 2 weeks. I'm really trying hard to keep to a 2-week schedule. That's one of my goals this year, because I just want to see if this is something that you all are interested in, if it's something my customers like to hear about, what I'm dyeing, what I'm knitting. So if you ever have any suggestions, please comment below on things you want to hear or see. Please give me a thumbs up if you liked the video, subscribe. That all tells me that you are enjoying the content and that I should keep putting out these videos. So I would really appreciate that. Until next time, happy making, and I hope you're all healthy and well wherever you are, and I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.